The camera light is already on. The audience is clapping. And millions of viewers think they know what kind of segment they're about to watch. But live television has a way of slipping out of the script, sometimes in seconds. And when it does, there is no rewind, no edit, no second take. What unfolded around Drake and Whoopi Goldberg would become one of those moments people still argue about long after the broadcast ends. Before we go any further, subscribe to The Truth Narrator, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. On paper, nothing about this was supposed to feel explosive. One of the most successful recording artists of his generation. One of the most experienced voices in American daytime television. A live show that prides itself on conversation, not confrontation. And yet, when music, culture, and public accountability collide in real time, the result can feel less like an interview and more like a test of composure, of credibility, and of control. The stakes were unusually high because of where the conversation was happening. The View is not built like a late-night comedy desk or a promotional radio stop. It is a roundtable watched by millions, shaped by opinion, and anchored by hosts who are known for pressing guests or public figures on issues that stretch far beyond entertainment. When a name like Drake enters that orbit, even indirectly, the tone changes. The questions change, and the margin for error shrinks. Drake's public image at that point was already complex. To fans, he was untouchable, chart dominance, cultural influence, and a catalog that blurred the line between vulnerability and bravado. To critics, he was something else entirely. A figure whose fame invited scrutiny, whose lyrics were dissected, and whose presence in pop culture sparked debate about responsibility, authenticity, and power. Every comment about him traveled fast. Every discussion about him felt amplified. Whoopi Goldberg, on the other hand, had nothing left to prove. Decades in film, television, and theater had cemented her reputation as someone who did not flinch under pressure. On live TV, she was known for doing something many hosts avoid: letting silence hang, letting discomfort breathe, and letting guests or subjects reveal themselves through their own words. When she spoke, audiences understood that she wasn't chasing viral moments. She was defending the integrity of the conversation. That's why viewers leaned in when Drake's name surfaced in a live context connected to the show. Not because anyone expected fireworks, but because live television has a history of turning casual dialogue into defining moments. When opinions meet influence, when a host refuses to soften a point, and when a celebrity is suddenly confronted with a perspective they can't control, something shifts. What made this moment matter wasn't volume or outrage. It was restraint. It was timing. It was the fact that everything unfolded in front of an audience that could see every pause, every change in tone, every recalibration happening in real time. No edits. No spin. Just a live broadcast doing what live broadcasts do best, revealing tension that can't be managed once it's already on air. For Drake, the risk was perception. For Whoopi Goldberg, the responsibility was balance. And for the show itself, the challenge was maintaining control while letting the conversation remain honest. These are the kinds of moments producers fear and viewers remember. The moments where a single question or a single response can reshape a narrative that took years to build. Nothing about this unfolded the way audiences expected. And the most telling part wasn't what was said, but how quickly the atmosphere changed once it was. And as the cameras kept rolling, the line between discussion and challenge began to blur in a way no one could ignore. Long before that live broadcast, the tension surrounding Drake didn't begin on a studio couch or under television lights. It was already forming in headlines, opinion columns, and social media debates that followed him wherever his name appeared. By the time his presence intersected with the world of daytime television, the conversation around him had grown far larger than music. Drake's career had been built on control, of sound, of image, of narrative. From early mixtapes to global tours, he shaped his public persona carefully. He spoke directly to fans through lyrics, addressed criticism through verses, and often stayed silent when controversy swirled, letting success speak for itself. That strategy worked for years. Commercial dominance can quiet a lot of noise, but it doesn't erase questions. It only delays them. In the months leading up to the moment that would echo across daytime television, discussions about Drake had shifted in tone. Critics were no longer focused only on chart performance or lyrical depth. Conversations expanded into cultural influence. What it means when a single artist holds that much sway over listeners, trends, and public conversation. Every lyric was parsed. Every collaboration was analyzed. and every silence was interpreted. At the same time, daytime talk shows, especially The View, were under their own microscope. The show had evolved into more than a place for celebrity promotion. It had become a forum where entertainment collided with ethics, culture, and accountability. Guests didn't just talk about projects. They were asked to talk about impact. And sometimes, those discussions weren't comfortable. Whoopi Goldberg had been part of that evolution. Her role at the table wasn't about ambush or spectacle. It was about grounding the conversation. She had interviewed countless public figures, actors, musicians, politicians, each bringing their own controversies with them. Over the years, she developed a reputation for something simple but rare on live TV: not rushing past uncomfortable truths. That reputation mattered, because when a show is known for honest discussion, viewers bring expectations with them. They don't tune in looking for rehearsed praise. They expect substance. And when a figure like Drake enters the conversation, even indirectly, those expectations intensify. There was also the issue of timing. Drake's cultural relevance wasn't fading, it was peaking. That made any critique feel sharper, any question feel heavier. The higher someone climbs, the more visible every misstep becomes. And while Drake had navigated controversy before, he had mostly done so on his own terms, through music releases, controlled interviews, or carefully worded statements. Daytime television is different. There is no soundtrack to soften the moment, no verse to reframe the narrative, no edit to cut away from silence. When a question lands on live TV, it lands exactly as it is, raw, public, and impossible to retract. Behind the scenes, producers understood this. Segments are planned, discussions outlined, but live conversation has its own gravity. A host can sense when a topic is charged. A guest or subject can feel when public patience is thinning. And viewers can tell when a discussion is about to cross from safe territory into something more serious. As the show prepared to address topics connected to Drake, there was already an undercurrent of anticipation. Not because anyone expected hostility, but because the cultural temperature around him was high. He represented success, influence, and controversy all at once. And when those elements converge, even a single question can feel like a challenge. What made the situation more delicate was the absence of distance. This wasn't a retrospective debate years later. This was happening in real time, while Drake remained at the center of pop culture. Anything said on air would immediately ripple outward, clipped, shared, and debated within minutes. Whoopi Goldberg understood that better than most. Live television had taught her that moments aren't defined by volume, but by clarity. A calm question can carry more weight than a raised voice. And silence, especially on camera, can speak louder than argument. As the conversation edged closer to its pivotal point, the atmosphere in the studio subtly shifted. The audience could feel it, even if they couldn't name it yet. The tone grew more measured. The pacing slowed. This was no longer casual commentary. It was a setup, not manufactured, but inevitable. The question wasn't whether something would happen. It was how it would unfold once it did. Because when live television strips away preparation and leaves only reaction, the truth has a way of surfacing, whether anyone is ready for it or not. The shift happens quietly. There is no raised voice, no dramatic cue, no warning graphic flashing on screen. The cameras stay wide, the table remains calm, and the audience settles into the familiar rhythm of daytime television. But in live broadcasting, tension doesn't announce itself. It creeps in through timing. As the discussion turns toward cultural influence and accountability, the tone changes. The cadence slows. Words are chosen more carefully. And then Whoopi Goldberg speaks, not louder, not sharper, but clearer. Her posture is steady, her expression neutral. She is not performing outrage. She is asking a question meant to be heard. She references Drake not as a headline, but as a symbol, an example of how influence functions at the highest level. The wording is deliberate. It's framed around responsibility, about how voices that reach millions don't exist in a vacuum. It's not an accusation. It's an invitation to engage. And then there is a pause. Live television does not forgive pauses. Every second stretches. The audience feels it before they understand it. The co-hosts remain still, eyes forward. No one interrupts. No one fills the space. The silence becomes part of the moment. Whoopi doesn't rush to soften the question. She doesn't rephrase it to make it easier. She lets it sit exactly where it lands. The camera cuts briefly, then returns to the table. The atmosphere has shifted. The energy in the room is different now, more focused, more alert. Viewers at home can sense it too. This is no longer a general discussion. This is a moment unfolding in real time. The question itself is measured but pointed. It centers on influence. What happens when words, lyrics, and public behavior ripple outward into culture? It asks whether success changes responsibility or merely amplifies it. And by invoking Drake's name in that context, it pulls him out of abstraction and into accountability. There is no attack in the delivery. That's what makes it heavier. Whoopi's body language remains composed. She leans slightly forward, hands still. Her eyes stay focused, not confrontational, but unwavering. This is not about catching someone off guard. It's about refusing to look away. The studio audience is quiet. No laughter. No applause. That absence matters. It signals recognition, an understanding that something real is happening, unscripted and unprotected. On live television, moments like this are dangerous because they can't be controlled once they begin. There's no producer stepping in. No commercial break to reset the tone. The show is live. Every reaction is permanent. The co-hosts glance briefly toward Whoopi, then back to the camera. They don't interject. They understand the gravity of the exchange. Interrupting would dilute it. Letting it breathe gives it weight. And so the silence continues. In that space, viewers are left to process the question themselves. Some nod along. Others feel discomfort. That discomfort is intentional, not as punishment, but as reflection. The question isn't demanding an answer on the spot. It's demanding acknowledgement. Whoopi finally speaks again, but only to clarify, not to retreat. Her words underline the same point, calmly reinforcing the idea that cultural power comes with consequences, whether acknowledged or not. There is no anger in her voice. There doesn't need to be. What makes the moment striking is how restrained it is. No shouting match. No viral one-liner. Just a live broadcast allowing a hard truth to exist without decoration. And because it's happening on The View, the impact feels broader. This isn't a niche conversation. This is daytime America watching an uncomfortable question unfold in real time. The cameras hold. The audience waits. The energy in the room tightens, not explosively, but decisively. Whatever comes next will define how this moment is remembered. And as the live broadcast continues, one thing becomes clear. There is no going back to casual conversation now. If you want to understand what happened next, and why this moment changed the tone of the entire segment, stay with the truth narrator. The aftermath begins instantly, though nothing outwardly dramatic occurs. That's what makes it unsettling. The cameras keep rolling, the lights stay bright, and the broadcast moves forward. But the atmosphere in the studio has changed in a way that can't be undone. There is a visible recalibration at the table. The co-hosts adjust in their seats, subtly shifting posture, choosing their next words with care. This is the moment after a difficult question has landed, when everyone involved understands that the tone of the segment has permanently shifted. No one jokes. No one rushes to smooth things over. Whoopi Goldberg remains composed. She does not apologize for the question, nor does she escalate it. Instead, she does something more effective. She moves the conversation forward without erasing what was just said. That choice signals confidence. It tells the audience that the question was intentional, necessary, and worth sitting with. The studio audience mirrors that seriousness. Applause, when it comes, is restrained and measured. There's no eruption, no visible division. What replaces it is attentiveness. People are listening differently now, aware that they've witnessed a moment that wasn't rehearsed or softened. From a production standpoint, this is one of the most difficult spaces to navigate. Live television depends on momentum. Awkwardness can stall it. But in this case, the discomfort doesn't stall the show, it deepens it. The conversation that follows is slower, more deliberate. Every sentence feels heavier, as though the room itself is weighing each word before it's spoken. What's striking is how little needs to be said to confirm that something meaningful has occurred. No one explicitly references tension. No host labels the exchange as confrontational. Yet viewers can feel it through pacing alone. This is the aftermath of accountability being introduced into a space often reserved for lighter discussion. The show continues, but it does not return to its earlier rhythm. The energy is different now, more reflective, more cautious. That shift is visible not only in dialogue, but in body language. Hosts lean in rather than back. Eye contact lingers longer. Transitions are slower. For the subject of the discussion, Drake, the impact is immediate, even in absence. His name now carries the weight of a question that was asked publicly, calmly, and without spectacle. That matters. Questions raised in anger can be dismissed as noise. Questions raised with restraint tend to linger. Whoopi's handling of the situation reinforces her role on the show. She doesn't dominate the aftermath. She allows space. That choice prevents the moment from becoming performative. It remains what it was from the beginning, a live, unfiltered examination of influence and responsibility. Viewers at home respond in real time. Social media lights up, not with outrage, but with discussion. Clips begin circulating, not because of volume or shock, but because of tone. People replay the moment to analyze it. They quote it. They debate its implications. That's often the mark of a lasting broadcast moment. Not instant chaos, but sustained conversation. Within the studio, the segment eventually moves on. It has to. Live television doesn't pause for reflection. But the people in the room know the difference between moving on and moving past something. This wasn't brushed aside. It was acknowledged by its very presence. By the time the show heads toward its next topic, the audience understands that they've seen something rare. A moment where a public figure's influence was questioned without hostility, and where live television chose honesty over comfort. And once a question like that exists in the public record, it doesn't disappear when the cameras cut away. Long after the broadcast ended, the moment continued to travel. Not as a scandal, not as a shouting match, but as a reference point. That's often how the most consequential live television moments age, not through outrage, but through repetition. The clip resurfaced in discussions about celebrity influence, media responsibility, and the evolving role of daytime talk shows in shaping cultural dialogue. For Drake, the exchange became part of a larger narrative already forming around him. It didn't derail his career. It didn't dent his commercial success, but it added a layer. From that point on, conversations about Drake were more frequently framed around impact rather than output. Not just what he created, but what his presence meant. That distinction matters, especially for artists operating at his level of visibility. What made the moment endure was its tone. There was no hostility to dismiss, no exaggeration to debunk. The question raised on air was measured and grounded in a broader cultural concern that made it difficult to ignore and even harder to caricature. Viewers who supported Drake debated it. Critics cited it. Neutral observers revisited it. The discussion expanded rather than collapsed. For Whoopi Goldberg, the moment reinforced something audiences already understood about her role on television. She wasn't there to manufacture viral clips. She was there to ask questions that reflected the concerns of a public navigating an increasingly complex relationship with fame. In an era where live TV often bends toward spectacle, her restraint stood out. The show itself, The View, also absorbed the impact. The segment became an example cited by media critics and producers alike. Proof that daytime television could host serious cultural conversations without sacrificing civility. It reminded viewers that not every meaningful moment needs a dramatic crescendo. Sometimes all it takes is a well-placed question and the courage to let it stand. Culturally, the exchange landed at a time when audiences were reassessing how they engage with celebrity. The gap between artist and influence had narrowed. Fans weren't just consuming music, they were evaluating values. In that climate, the idea that success comes with responsibility wasn't radical. But hearing it articulated on live television gave it new weight. The reason this moment still matters today is simple. It represents a shift. A shift away from treating celebrity as untouchable. A shift toward expecting public figures to engage with the broader consequences of their platforms. And a shift in how media can facilitate that conversation without turning it into spectacle. Live television is often remembered for its mistakes, slips of the tongue, technical errors, unexpected outbursts. But occasionally, it's remembered for its clarity. This was one of those times. No one lost control. No one raised their voice. Yet the impact was undeniable. Years later, viewers still return to that clip not to relive drama, but to study tone, pacing, and intent. They analyze how a calm question can cut deeper than confrontation. They note how silence can command more attention than argument. And they recognize how rare it is for a live broadcast to allow a difficult idea to exist without rushing past it. That's why this moment endures. Not because it shocked, but because it respected the audience enough to trust them with complexity. If you value stories like this, where live television reveals truth through restraint, and where cultural moments are examined with clarity and depth, Subscribe to the Truth Narrator, like this video, share your perspective in the comments, and pass it along to others who believe that the most powerful moments are often the quietest ones.